I think that's the opportunity, and I don't think private equity is an ally in that work, because I think they're set up incorrectly.
Or change the whole mindset of private equity. There's a lot of capital there.
A lot of nonsense.
Let me start by introducing myself. My name's Marie Spies. I'm co-CEO and co-founder of HolonIQ, and Damien, as you know, HolonIQ is a global market intelligence platform. We actually track education, climate and health data, trying to give a 360-degree view on what's happening in these markets, which are really, really important, but the data in these markets is super fragmented. And so it's really hard to find the important things.
Right.
And so HolonIQ sort of focus in there, and like we talked about earlier, it's investment, jobs, market developments, innovations, startups, new technologies, all those sorts of things. And you are doing amazing things as well in data and also investment. So.
Well, I'm a fan of your work, so it's a pleasure
and
honor to be on the stage with you. As you point out, data is integral to how we would actually think about problem solving. It's one thing to have data to complain, it's something else to possess and use data to actually solve problems. Lafayette Square is an investment firm focused on driving capital, services, and technology to working class people and working class places. We've set 2030 goals, including to create 100,000 working class jobs, invest 50% of our capital in working class places, and see that half of our portfolio companies adopt services that reduce turnover and increase healthcare and retirement benefit adoption. Data is integral to executing that 2030 mission. We raise lots and lots of money from institutional investors. We have partnerships with, right here in Washington, D.C., the Small Business Administration, plus the capital markets. And it's interesting, we've arrived at this place where we now actually get economic incentives from the capital markets to deliver quality jobs with lower turnover, better healthcare and retirement benefit adoption, specifically when those businesses are in working class places, employing working class people. And a part of the reason the capital markets will actually now give us a lower cost of capital to do that is our capacity to share data. Lafayette Square is named after the park here in DC. I'm the son of a bus driver in Washington, DC. My mom grew up here as well. Went to college up the road at Georgetown. And this conversation about public-private partnership insinuates that you are being transparent. Transparent with what? We report the wages, turnover, healthcare benefit adoption, retirement benefit adoption, and job training by zip code for every portfolio company investment we make. That's transparency.
Yeah, for sure.
But how can I do it without resources like those that you possess or what we've built at Lafayette Square through our Potomac platform? So elevating this conversation about why data is important is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. At the moment, and I'm hoping in this case, I'm hoping the middleman can be destroyed at some point. At the moment, there has to be a middleman between, investors who want to do good. They want to invest in impact, and they just can't find the information. It's really hard, and there's sort of these platforms or data or whatever it is, not enough of them in the middle who can help them find information in order to invest, impact investments particularly. And hopefully over time, this data becomes more connected than it is right now. It's very, very fragmented and hard to, the data sets are often government data sets and private data sets, but they're in all these different places and they do not connect with each other. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and it's hard work, really hard work, as you would know, to connect these different data points, to connect the money with where the need is.
Sure. We talk about data in 4 phases. We talk about descriptive data, diagnostic data, predictive data, and then finally prescriptive data. And when you walk that journey, it starts to tease out what are the questions that matter. Like, does place matter? Who's working class? What defines economic mobility? If we wanted to have an intervention, how could we prescribe a set of services, capital, tech that would result in an intervention in a place or for a population of people? There are people with money and power who don't believe these questions are worthy questions because data is one of many excuses.
Yeah.
What's cool about this moment is, of course, if you have the tech, God forbid you have a balance sheet or services, you can just go do the stuff without seeking permission. Just actually make investments, make profits, and track and measure how you created economic mobility, and then report it out. I think in our system, if you make money and you attack it with the transparency, eventually, not immediately, but eventually, you'll win over hearts and minds. But it does presuppose you have quality data and you've actually made money. Okay, and that's where the tension enters the room. Because people don't like taking risk. And to take risk based on data and a hypothesis that, in our case, working class people and working class places are a good bet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that I think is super impressive about the work that you're doing is the ground up, right? Actually, place matters a lot. And for us in our platform, we look at global data. So what's happening in Japan, or what's happening in India, and what are the thematics and the sort of themes in investing, or the areas that people are interested in terms of education, health and climate. I mean, you see a lot of very, very nuanced, locally important issues that are oversized in some places and undersized in others just because context matters.
That's right.
And so then you're dealing with both data and I think I want to talk about investment as well, but the data from the ground up, and then when you're talking about local communities, you want to make an impact from the ground up, but that's not scale. And then we have inherent mismatches between objectives, and I think that's hard too.
Yeah. So I love talking to you. I can go deep on America because I'm here, and double clicking on your point about context and scale. We have 350 million people in the United States. We got about 150 million workers in our labor pool. Roughly speaking, 50 million workers are in government-related jobs. 50 million workers are with our biggest employers like Amazon, who's represented here at this conference. And then you have 50 million workers employed by businesses that have $1 billion in revenue or less. Those 50 million workers are employed by 240,000 companies. Those 240,000 companies do a terrible job with benefits. It's an open secret. You actually will have significantly better benefits if you're employed by a government or if you're working for an Amazon.
A giant,
Yes. All the data from Commerce shows healthcare benefit adoption, retirement benefit adoption, particularly for working class people employed by those 240,000 companies, is 20 to 30% adoption, again, of healthcare and retirement benefits when you're working for, you're one of the 50 million people employed by those 240,000 companies. And so I just want to call out 2 obvious points. 3, as you say, place matters. Number 2, we know working class people are not adopting services with any regularity today. So status quo does not work. So that's an area to focus. it's both geography and it's the wages of the worker, would tell you a lot about the probability of them getting what they need to have economic mobility in our system. And then the last piece is if you have a sense about the place and the wages, industry by industry, there are opportunities to intervene using capital.
Yep.
If an employer knew they could raise $25, $50, $100, $200 million from a bank, from a lender, and the cost of that debt could go down if they did the right thing by their workers, that's an incentive that would drive different behavior by the 240,000 employers of the 50 million people.
Yeah.
So how do we get the capital markets to play a role in doing something in their self-interest? Lower turnover, higher healthcare and retirement benefit adoption results in a more productive workforce that generates more cash flow. That should be rewarded with a lower cost of capital because it's good business. Not that it feels good, it's just economic self-interest.
Yes.
You can't have that daisy chain without the tech.
No.
And we have data now today, to your point, by zip code, where we have a sensibility of what's going on with FICO scores, healthcare, retirement benefit adoption. We know medical debt, student loan debt. We can tell you with precision if people are housing burdened or not. How are we using that data in a positive, affirmative way to help employers attract capital at lower costs? That's an opportunity we're really excited about, and we're doing it. Again, not seeking permission, we're doing it. And we report the data to our regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we invite everybody to scrutinize the data. But this technology that you've built and how you're thinking about it globally is phenomenal. The United States is such a unique opportunity to really go deep because we have a lot of ground up analysis available.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, do you know, I think the world has to start thinking differently about scale. Whether it be investors, investing, what are they investing in? Or you make something once and replicate it a million times, it's easy. That's the sort of industrial definition of scale. But when we're talking the way we're talking about fragmented, small, community-based, bottom-up and so on, it all seems too hard. You need the tech and you need the data in order to see patterns and connect things, which in an industrial sort of definition is not really possible. And so I hope to see going forward the world rethink about how they think about investing in, or even, we're talking about private equity, but even venture capital, thinking differently and using technology and data to think differently around investing in things which seem small and fragmented, but actually there's an underpinning layer of potential scale. Yeah. Because that's what it's sort of in the too hard bucket right now. Hopefully we're moving forward.
But look, let's be spicy. It's the morning when we are recording this. You spoke about cutting out the middleman early in the discussion. I like to cut out private equity. Okay. Like to cut them out. You know, of those 240,000 companies I've mentioned, private equity is invested in 24,000.
Yeah, not many.
Okay, so 90% of the employers of 50 million people have no economic ties to the private equity industry. Yeah. I think private equity is a distraction. Anytime you buy and sell businesses within a 5 to 7 year window, you're not a long-term stakeholder, really committed to economic mobility for workers because you flip businesses for a living. Yeah. Like, I want to talk to 3-generation family-owned business doing landscaping. I want to talk to a company that trains dogs to sniff cargo at airports. I want to do real companies that generate cash flow and are owned by principals, not agents. I want to partner with them to create economic mobility for their workers. And I want to share the data direct. You know, in this age of AI, ML, large language models, all the things, right? let's apply that big brain to a better outcome for a $50,000 worker who needs to be on a glide path to a higher FICO score, home ownership instead of renting.
Yeah.
I think that's the opportunity. And I don't think private equity is an ally in that work because I think they're set up incorrectly.
Or, yes, or change the whole mindset of private equity. There's a lot of capital there. There's a lot of capital.
A lot of nonsense.
It's set up in a certain way
Yes.
to both drive and react to things that are happening in the market. They make things happen in the market. They make industrial scale the thing that everyone wants to get to, and therefore they influence product development because of that.
That's right.
And they influence consumer behaviour because of that.
That's right.
But when you're talking about education, climate and health, they are not they're not normal markets. They're not fully just unregulated, or they're not just supply and demand, right?
Because they're trying to get to the Hamptons.
Well,
it's hard. It's hard. Like all that stuff you're talking about interrupts the trip to the Hamptons.
You either cut private equity out because of its model right now, or you look at that model and change the model through different ways.
Yeah. And look, this is where I have a massive critique of my father, the bus driver, and working class people. It's their money that is being used to extract, right, and undermine the economic mobility of their own people. Private equity can't exist without public pension funds, endowments and foundations, right? It's nurses, cops.
Sure.
And there's no critique or analysis of the source of the money and the misalignment between the source of the money and the things that are being done. And I think that's where tech is also going to start to tease that out.
I hope so.
Because finally, we know today, 50% of, in my business, private credit, 50% goes to just 5 states.
Yeah.
California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois.
Why? Because they're big. It's not just, it's the same thing. Everyone just looks for the big pot because it's easier. But actually, I think the world has to rethink scale.
Explicitly.
And technology and data is going to help do that. We're not there yet.
Well, that wraps our candid conversation. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking and sharing your candid thoughts. So let's give a round of applause and thanks.